now, but he said, well, people, and if people lose God, they're going to search for something else. And I think in Europe, people search they want to fill up the gap in their heart with, for example, nationalism, but also with drugs or with partying all the time. They do things to fill the emptiness in their heart, and that's something else. I see big chances for Islam, because I think Islam is the last real religion. And a lot of people, especially when I talk with Protestant Christians who are very angry all the time when it comes to Islam, but when you talk to them for real and in a calm way, they realize very fast that, for example, the things my problems, theological problems with Christianity, for example, the Trinity, they feel this. They feel what I mean. So that's what I always tell them. I say, you know that it's illogical. And they say, oh, well, maybe it's illogical, but... And so I see big chances for Islam as a religion to grow in a positive way, especially in places where people lost faith in God. And maybe that's a mission. We don't know, but it will be nice.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum.
In my day job, I've had the pleasure of going to Holland quite a few times in the last few years, and like many international travelers, you know, I've used Uber to get around the city, in Amsterdam in particular. But I was really disturbed by something, and this is what I was kind of curious about your perspective as it relates to anti-discrimination laws in the Netherlands, as it relates to discrimination against Muslims as they're trying to integrate into the workforce. In particular, I met a Dutch young man who was driving an Uber. He said he was a college grad, born and raised of Pakistani descent, born and raised in the Netherlands. And he said that every time he goes into a job interview, he's asked about his prayer habits and other things that we would, in the U.S., we would find that those are non-starters. Nobody gets asked about those kinds of questions here. And he said to me, do you think I'm driving an Uber because I choose to? I can't get a job. Anywhere I go, I'm facing these kinds of discrimination issues. And, you know, so anyway, and then he said ultimately, he goes, I identify first as Muslim, then as Pakistani, and then third as Dutch, even though he was born in Holland. And I find that as, you know, in this country we have at least we start from the premise of that there are anti-discrimination laws that protect people when they are applying for jobs. Are there similar protections in the Netherlands, or are they coming? Because I worry about that this large Muslim Moroccan population, for example, is being, or Pakistani is being, you know, kind of isolated in a ghetto where they are, or a mental ghetto where they really are not able to contribute more faithfully to society as a whole, and are identifying with their ethnic background as opposed to, like you are, for example, of the people and contributing broadly to the Netherlands.
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, in the Netherlands there are a lot of anti-discrimination laws. Of course we have a constitution as well, and the first article in the constitution is that all people should be treated equal, no matter of race, religion, etc., etc. So there are a lot of laws like that in the Netherlands. But there's also discrimination, and I think that discrimination is something that you see all over the world. All minorities. I talked to some people from Lebanon yesterday. They told me that people from Syria who fled to Lebanon are discriminated because they are from Syria and they're refugees, and they're a burden for them. The same, it's what you see in Turkey, and in the Netherlands you see that with Moroccan people or Turkish people, and they are not refugees, but I think most of the time the majority in countries is skeptical about minorities in general. But yeah, fortunately we have laws that have to prevent people from discrimination, but that's not always enough, because when it comes to especially commercial companies, they can always say, no, he didn't have the papers that we were looking for, or he has a weird smile or whatever. So that is a big problem. It is, and I don't have an answer for that problem. But in the end, you see that especially the third and fourth generation in the Netherlands are doing so much better. People starting their own companies. You have Islamic lawyers, you have Islamic doctors, engineers. So in the end, and it takes a lot of time, and that's not a nice thing, of course, but it takes a lot of time to walk through the institutions, as they say in Dutch. And I believe it will change. Only it takes so much time, and that's something that a lot of people aren't willing to wait for, of course. And in the other part, the other side of the story is that you see, especially in Eastern Europe, that there's a very strong anti-Islam movement now, and it's not only in Eastern Europe, but because the anti-Islamic groups are uniting in the European Union now. So it became one powerful force in politics now. So that's something that's very worrying, and it gives a lot of the normal people, as you can say, the people in general in different European countries, an excuse, because they say, well, we have 1/3 of parliament saying Muslims are wrong, or they create problems. It isn't that bad if we discriminate, because we know they cause problems. So it's something that works on several ways, and it's very worrying. But I think the most important thing is educate people, telling people that it's wrong what they are doing. And I think it's also important to promote Islam and help each other. So if there is a guy with a successful company who is a Muslim, he can always help other Muslims, for example, when it comes to, we call it stages, I don't know, the internships, for example. So you can help each other as a community. It's an obligation. So why wouldn't you do that? So I don't have a complete and satisfying answer, but this is what it is.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I have two questions, if I may. During the discussion, you were mentioning that you had Christian questions and you found actually Muslims answers. Could you actually share with us a few of those actually where you think actually that these are the ones that made it for you? And the second question is, with your involvement with the political field and being maybe actually prior anti-Islam. Oh, sure, sorry. With the political movement and being anti-Islam prior to you being Muslim, you have mentioned that maybe most people will look at Islam based on maybe some of these terrorists around the world and maybe in Europe. Are these actual terrorists, or maybe these are actually like movements by certain governments in Europe that Islamophobic, maybe that actually did make Islam look bad? What's your take on that actually as being involved in the anti-Islam movement back then?
Okay, that's a big question. The first half of the question was about Christian doubts. My doubts had to do with especially with the Trinity, because in Christianity we believed that God exists as one being, but in three persons: God the Father, God the Son, that's Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. And I always found it very hard to understand the concept, because in Christianity, Jesus Christ dies on the cross, but he is God, so God dies. So I asked the minister when I was 12 or 13, how is it possible that something that is infinity, if God is infinity or infinite, how is it possible that it dies? Because then it is ended, it's ending. So that's impossible. And if he is dead and he is alive at the same time, that's something like a square circle. That's impossible. And then they said, well, it's a mystery. So yeah, but you have to believe it. But if I try to believe it, I can't, because it's a mystery, and I don't found that very satisfying. So that's something that And there are a lot of theologians with very nice concepts, but in the end, it's coming back to the question: is the God of Jesus Christ, is it one or three? And in the whole Bible, there's no sentence in the Bible that says God is three. It isn't there. And the parts that are referring to something that could be interpreted as three are added later. And it's even in the Christian Bible, you can see that it's almost always between, I don't know how you say it, we call it haakjes, between quotes. No, not the quote. Yeah, that one. And in Bible it says the sentences between those things are added later. So there are in the Bible there's no referation to God as three, and there is even a sentence that Jesus Christ says, "Hear, O Israel, your God is one."